What we'll do, I'll say a few words, and then we're going to watch a short video that the Psyche's put together for Ida. And then I'll give a memorandum of Ida, and then we'll let anyone who wants to speak stand up and speak. Okay, those of you who don't know me, my name is Christopher. My name's been had for good and evil all over the place. But I'm glad that some of Ida's friends and family are here. I do want you to know that, well, let me just tell you a little story. About 5 years ago, Ida said, Christopher, come with me. We got in her car, and I said, Ida, let me drive. She said, no, I'm driving. That's Ida, typical Ida, okay? When I have driven with Ida, we go Ida's way, nobody else's way. She was taking me up to the University of Utah because she wanted to donate her body to science, to donate her body to help kids, help doctors to learn about a body that has been taken care of. Ida all of her life ate properly, didn't drink, didn't smoke, lived a very, very healthy lifestyle. And she wanted other people to benefit from that. And she made a point when we were talking to the person up there, because she made me promise that that's what we would do with her body. And she signed it over to the University of Utah, argued with the guy like Ida does, because he said, well, you can have a memorial service and then we'll take. She goes, no, they can have whatever they want, but I want my body up there. This is indicative of Ida, anybody who knows her, if you've known her close. Now, some of her friends and family that have known her for a long time, Ida made some changes in her life. Some changes that in some people's minds are negative. But they were never to Ida and not to those who knew her well. I have known Ida better than any man during her life. And that's true. Okay? Better than any man. She was never married, never had any children. She loved her family. She loved everybody very dearly. But over the last 8 years, we got really, really close. But there's one rumor that I want to dispel right now. Ida Smith never did anything that I asked her to, because I never asked Ida Smith to do anything, except may I keep my shoes on to come in and remove a box out of your house. Ida did everything on her own. And we're going to talk about her life when we get into a memorandum about her, but I want you to know that and understand it. And for the friends and family that are here, this is going to be a little bit different than a normal LDS memorial service. But please understand, this is for Ida. This isn't for us. This is for Ida. This is the way she wanted it. But if you'll stay around and you'll see, and you'll let me explain some of her life, you'll begin to understand her. And we can put the differences aside that we have and come together for one purpose. Ida Smith. Who was she? What did she believe? What was she like? Why did she almost make me her mentor, which I really wasn't. If you knew Ida, she taught a lot more than she listened. And she was an incredible woman. And that's why we're here tonight, to celebrate her life. So we're going to watch a short video that the Psyches have put together. Then please, folks, hang around, and I will tell you a little bit about Ida from the beginning. She was born, where she came from, her family, her ancestry. It'll be very informative, and it'll be wonderful for you to know. Okay, so let's start with the video. For those of you who, like I said, are her friends and family, they're here. Normally you begin any type of meeting with invocation. I want you folks to know what we believe, what Ida believed. Okay, Ida believes that you pray always. That there's never a moment that you do not pray. And that was what Ida was all about. She prayed with her actions. She couldn't be on her knees, none of us can, praying with our eyes closed and our head bowed. But prayer, the true order of prayer, is one of action, and Ida realized that. So as we sit and we go through her life, I hope the family and friends that are here, that are willing to stay, you're going to understand what happened in Ida's mind, in her heart, the things that meant something to her. You won't agree with it. Some of it might make you a little uncomfortable, but it's who Ida became. Okay? I'm going to go to the end of her life first, because it was that same stubbornness that I was talking about that took her life. Months ago I said, Ida, please don't drive anymore. Let somebody go with you, because she was not getting around really well. She was just, her mind was there and just as strong as Ida could be, but she wanted to drive herself and do things. So it was on Valentine's Day of this year that she went to mail a letter. Simply to mail a letter. And normally she would park in a handicap stall. So there's some seats over here if you want. So this time she went and someone had parked in the handicap stall, like sometimes happened. And as Ida is, I have never once heard a negative thing out of her mouth. Ever, 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 ever. No gossip. Never did she speak poorly of anybody. So when I got the story, the people who took the parking spaces weren't bad people. They simply inconvenienced her a little bit. But since she wasn't used to the parking space that she parked in, she didn't see the curb. And she went down very hard. She went down hard, and as she tells the story, she laid there for a few minutes wondering, okay, what have I done now? In 2008, she broke her left femur playing basketball with some of her nieces and nephews. This time she laid there for a time, and she simply assessed her own body, what works and what doesn't. She realized as she got into her left leg that it wasn't working. So she doesn't even know how long she was laying there on the ground, and finally a lovely couple, as she puts it, came and to her aid and asked her, can we help you? Normal people would have just called an ambulance because Ida couldn't get up. But not Ida Smith. She wouldn't let those lovely people call an ambulance. She had that gentleman pick her up and put her in her car because her right leg worked. And she said, my right leg worked. I live right over here. I will drive myself home. That's Ida Smith. Okay? That's what she did. Her leg, she shattered her tibia, completely compressed it down and destroyed it from the top. Okay? This lady's in her car, and the family follows her home, thinking that they could help her get out of her car. She simply asked them, my neighbor, could you knock on the door, see if he is home, and ask him if he could help me get to my home? Well, that was Dominic Larkin, who's her neighbor, and they knocked on his door. Dominic came out, and Ida said, I think I need to go to the hospital. Dominic offered to drive. No. Ida drove. She's in shock, folks. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. This 83-year-old lady is in shock. Dominic takes her over there and lifts her into a wheelchair. They take her in the emergency room. And a couple hours later, I think, Sherry and I come over there. And no, nothing was wrong with Ida. Doctor was there. Took them a long time to figure out what was wrong. They finally got the x-rays back, and Ida began to argue with the doctor about the osteoporosis in her bones. She said, I do not have osteoporosis. We sat there, she was arguing with the doctor. She goes, I take supplements and I do not have osteoporosis. And the doctor looked at us and we looked at him. He goes, what? And how did he put it down? He said something like, well, you need to drink milk to get... She refused to believe that. The fact is, she did. Once we talked to the surgeon after the surgery was done, her bones were very, very brittle, very poor. Okay, but I was never going to tell Ida that. There's no way, because she'd be arguing with me. So she laid there. The surgeon wasn't able to do her surgery until Monday. She laid there in extreme pain. Here's a woman who doesn't even take aspirin, folks. But this was too much for her. So they began to administer morphine to her. And you can imagine that little frail lady. At that time, she had lost a lot of weight. She weighed about 90 pounds. And they started giving really low doses of morphine, because as soon as they did, it affected her breathing. And Ida couldn't breathe right. And her oxygen level went whoop. They said, no, breathe, Ida, breathe, because it was relaxing her, making a little bit loopy. It was good to see Ida loopy. Okay, but so you can imagine Ida there. She just got done arguing with the doctor. They administer some medicine, and then it starts to take effect a little bit, and it feels pretty good. They kept the dose really, really low so that she could breathe. So she had to deal with that incredible pain for those 2 days until they got her in surgery. We had a great talk before she went into surgery. Okay, the surgery is tough on an older person. Very, very tough. She was in surgery for about 3 hours and 45 minutes. And they were able to repair that leg, and the surgeon told us in the way that doctors speak, you know, sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. To us, we're like, Ida? She's the healthiest woman we know. She's strong. But once she got out of that surgery, things progressively, the morphine and the pills, she had a hard time concentrating. She had a hard time. They had her breathing oxygen, and that helped for a while. The whole time, Ida would not let me contact her family. She would not let me call her family, folks. Here I am, I've got her health power of attorney. I'm going, really? It's not like I'm the greatest Smith in the world, but she wouldn't let me call them. And I said, because you know why? She didn't want to worry anyone. She didn't want to worry her dear sisters who were moving here. She didn't want to worry anybody. She thought she was going to handle this. Well, come Wednesday, I could see that there was some issues. So I went against her will and called her brothers and told them what was going on. And the brothers were very gracious, and they realized Ida's stubbornness. Hyrum, her brother, came and visited her that Friday. And I wasn't there at the time. The psyches were visiting her, but I guess Hyrum came in there and said, I got no mercy on you, sis. Your stubbornness, it's your stubbornness. That's Ida Smith. Her stubbornness. So let's go Saturday. I visit her for a time, and some people are there. They came and go, and then I had to go watch my granddaughter for a while. And I was watching my granddaughter for a time, and I get a call from the hospital that Ida's taken a little bit of a return for the worst. And the hospital doesn't call unless there's been something. So I got the neighbors to come and watch my little granddaughter, and I rushed to the hospital. That was probably about 10:30 at night. And I got there, and Ida was unresponsive to the medical people. I got there and I took her hand and I said, Ida, you've got to squeeze my hand. And she squeezed my hand. So I knew she was there. But the medication was making her very unresponsive. And then she finally came to a little bit after a couple hours. They took her off the medication. The doctor said, you know what? The medication is killing this lady. We're taking her off. And I said, okay, you know, that's what you got to do. And he made that decision. As they did that, she began to improve. She began to improve, and she was able to communicate with me a little bit more. She was worried about her mask. Who have you told? Things like that. Ida and I talked for a time, and she, in her way, she didn't want to burden anybody. She knew that this was a serious, serious accident, and that it would require her help, my help, other people's help for the rest of her life. And Ida just said, I just don't want to go through with this. I just said, Ida, well, it's not my choice. So we had some friends come by. She's got some cool friends that came by. And the five of us were in that room discussing kind of the best we could with Ida. And at that time, Ida basically said goodbye, shut her eyes, and became totally, completely unresponsive. 100%. Breathing normal. She was hooked up. In the hospital, she just went to sleep, basically. Doctors came in. I asked them if there was is she in a coma? What happened? But I knew what happened, and I'll explain that in a minute, exactly what happened, how Ida made that choice and how it works. It's cool, wonderful, wonderful for everybody to know. But anyway, at that time, me and those friends, we said goodbye to Ida because she was basically no longer there. And the hospital said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I told Ida that she never wants a feeding tube. She doesn't want to be on a respirator. I said, can't we just make her comfortable? And the doctor said, well, that's your choice. That's your choice. And I did not want to see that lady suffer, though she wasn't suffering much at all. But I could tell there was tinges in her body, reflexes going on. So I asked them whatever they do for hospice to make it so. And the doctor signed the hospice release, and I had an ambulance bring her home and put her in her bed. And we were there in her bed, made her comfortable. We didn't know how long she was going to last. We thought, I'd asked my daughter, hey, we're going to have to hire you to help take care of Ida. And so she cleared her schedule, ready to go. And so that, it was, what, about 3:30, 4 o'clock Sunday. And we were getting Ida comfortable as we saw it. And come about, I guess, what was it, 5:30, 5:35, I just had to go to sleep. And so I left her in the care of a couple of the neighbors and her friends, and I left. As soon as I left, Ida died. I went upstairs, got a call, she died. I was floored. Came down and Ida was gone. So that's the end of her life. So let's start again with the beginning of her life, and we'll show you folks how Ida Smith became Ida Smith. Because it's nothing but we need to be happy for her, what she's doing and what that person is doing. She always called her higher self, her Heavenly Father, she called that person she. She knows what's going on. She's helping me. Amazing lady. Got to tell you a funny story. She called me up once and said, those angels are messing with me because I can't find my pills. I can't find them. I haven't found them for days. So I come down and say, Ida, they're right here. She goes, they were not there yesterday. And they weren't, you know, maybe a little bit of dementia was set in, but she's just that stubborn. Ida believes what she wants to believe. And I'm not going to mention it again, but I want you folks to know everything that she did. She made the decision. The memorial, the controversial memorial in the Salt Lake City cemetery, that was Ida's doing. I had nothing to do with that. The Thedis paid for it. They paid for everything. And Ida designed it. Ida placed it there. Ida did it. The rumors that go on about me controlling her, for those who know who she is, are absolutely ridiculous. And now I'm going to show you how strong that woman was and why she was so strong. So let's review Ida Smith's life with my terrible writing. Ida Smith was born to two people called Joseph F. Smith and Ruth Pingree. Okay, Ruth's family, we're going to show you where the tie is to Julie Taggart now, because I know a lot of you have wondered that. Okay, Ruth Pingree, her folks were Frank Pingree and Pauline Taggart. Julie married into the Taggart family. That's Julie right there. Raise your hand, Julie. And she's the one responsible kind of for introducing Ida to me. So then she's the one that needs to be stoned, not me. Not in that way, Julie. Okay, so those are Ruth, her mother's parents, and then we're going to just follow her father's line because that's the most interesting. Because Ida adored her family and adored being a Smith more than anything else. Her father was Joseph F. Smith, not the prophet, LDS prophet Joseph F. Smith. We'll get to him, okay? Joseph F. Smith's parents were Hyrum Mack Smith and Ida Elizabeth Bowman. That's where Ida got her name, okay? Does that make sense, folks? And then we go down, Hyrum Mack. Hyrum Mack was the son of Joseph F. Smith. That's the prophet, the sixth president of the LDS Church. That's who he was. And his third wife, he had 5 wives. His third wife, Edna Lamson. Okay, Edna Lamson was the sister, the younger sister of his first plural wife. Her name was Julia. No, not Julia. I think I wrote it down here. Julina Lamson. She was Joseph F. Smith's first plural wife. He was married before. He married his cousin, who was she was the daughter of Samuel H. Smith, one of Joseph Smith's brothers. Okay, and so Joseph F. married his cousin, and when he went to take another wife, that cousin said, "Not for me." She moved to California, left him, so he entered into plural marriage and married Edna Lamson's sister, Julina. Okay, Ida's lineage comes down through these two. Joseph F. dad was Hyrum, Joseph Smith's brother. Okay, and her mother, Joseph F.'s mother was Mary Fielding. Okay, so now you can see, and then it goes the rest. Hyrum, of course, was a son of Joseph Smith Sr. and Lucy Mack, and then you have all the brothers and sisters of Joseph Smith. So that's Ida's pedigree. That's where she came from. She was so proud of that. Nothing meant more to Ida than being a Smith. And with that, she loved her ancestry. She loved her great-great-uncle, Joseph, more than anyone. She read anything she could get her hands on about him. Anything. Of course, Hyrum didn't do a lot of writing. He was more, of an introvert. But Ida loved her heritage. It meant a lot to her, and it still does. Okay, so now you understand a little bit where Ida Smith came. And Julie, now you know where you fit in. You see? Okay, so Ida was born. I'm going to put this here so we can keep that. My writing's terrible, but anyway. Okay, folks, for those of you who are LDS now, bear with me, and I want to help you to understand what Ida came to believe. Okay, and please don't be offended by some of the words and symbolism that I use. She asked me to do this. She wanted the people that would respect her enough to come to her memorial to understand why she believed the way she did. A few things about her life. And since we're just talking about her life, we're going to talk about what she came to believe. She took it all from Joseph Smith. Everything that she believed, Ida took from the Holy Temple Endowment in every way. The symbolism of that and what Joseph meant, Ida patterned her life after that. So who was Ida before she came to earth? For want of a better term, and I'm not going to go in out of respect for the endowment, I'm not going to go into a lot of those details, but I'm going to help you to understand where Ida was at. So each of you will understand. Ida, before she came to the earth as Eve, was Michael. Michael was put to sleep, was he not? And he became Adam and Eve. We know how that story goes. Ida, but that's symbolic. It's symbolic. Symbolic of what? Ida believed, as she came to understand it, that all human beings were equal. We're equal. We're equal gods. The Jehovah Elohim and Michael in the temple endowment represented the Godhead, the Father, the Creator, Jehovah, the governor, he who governs it all, and Michael, in Hebrew, he who is like God, that created the whole earth. And Michael's put to sleep and becomes Adam, put to sleep again and becomes Eve. So Ida's thinking about these things, folks. Okay, where did I come from? What does this mean? What was Joseph trying to tell us? What was he trying to say symbolically? Problem is, the end of the endowment was changed. It was changed after Joseph's death. Because at first, when Jehovah and Elohim put Michael asleep, guess what they did in the final scene? They woke him up. That's what happened. The final scene of the original endowment, and most historians who've got the proper records know this, is a scene where you have Michael sitting in a chair asleep, Elohim and Jehovah behind him, and they wake Michael up. Michael comes to, and he says, Jehovah, now I know who you are. And he points to Jehovah and tells the audience, this is our Christ. This is Jehovah. Every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that he is our Lord. That was the ending scene that was taken out. Why? Because some people, there were some fights going on, folks, back there in Nauvoo when Joseph died. People didn't agree with each other, but the authorities of the church couldn't quite reconcile what happened to Adam and Eve once Michael woke up. What happened? What happened to them? Ida figured these things out. Before Ida was born, she was an advanced human, created in the image of all gods, if I can put it that way. She chose by her own free will. That's where the endowment goes with the creation process, where Michael and Jehovah are always agreeing with each other. We will do this, we will do that. Ida participated in that like we all did. She chose to come down as family when she did, for the purpose that she had in her own mind, according to her own free will. She chose that. Ida came down and she began to grow into one of the most stalwart, stubborn, and most loving women you've ever known. She was a champion of women's rights, those who know what she did. She was appointed as the first director of the BYU Women's Research Institute. Ida Smith, she loved that. She served with Dallin Oaks. She served with all the big wigs. And she loved those men. Ida never once spoke a negative word about anybody in her past. As she made different decisions in her life and made changes about the church and her beliefs, you can imagine, I understand where people coming from like, geez, what's going on here? But I'm the one that was upset. I was upset at how she was getting treated, how her family and other friends were treating her. So upset because it bothered me that would happen. And guess what she did? She gave me a gift one time. This is what she gave me. Christopher, this is for you. She gave me this little bear. On it, if you can't see it, it has 70 times 7. That's from that scripture in the New Testament about forgiving people. Someone asked Jesus, how many times do I forgive people? Up to 70 times 7. So, of course, I joke with Ida like I do. I said, so, after 140 times I can condemn them and not forgive them? She goes, no, Christopher. Just forgive them, for they know not what they do. Brought tears to my eyes as that lady taught me a great lesson. Because not once. I would talk about her brothers. She would never talk about them. I would talk about her family. She would never. They were lovely, wonderful people. And I had no right, because I didn't know them. They didn't know me. And I had no right to feel like they did because I had made certain choices in her life. I had no right. But I came to love her. She and I became very, very close. Very close because she had never had that relationship with a man. And no, folks, all these rumors that fly out there, nothing was ever inappropriate. Nothing ever. There's all kinds of rumors you read, and those of you who know what's out there about Joseph Smith, you can imagine the types of things that are out there that just aren't correct. Ida was a good friend, a very loving friend. She felt more at peace when she was around me than any of you. And it was tough for her sometimes, even to be in group meetings. She just wanted to be around me. But of course, that wasn't always possible. It wasn't always the right thing. But one of her favorite scriptures in the Book of Mormon, she loved the Book of Mormon, folks. That's what led her to who I am and what I do. Her love for the Book of Mormon. Nothing else. She understood it better than anybody I've known. She read it, studied it, lived it. One of her favorite scriptures was in Alma 40, and it talks about what happens when you die. It's very, very incredible if you read it. Those of you here that aren't LDS, don't even know anything about that Book of Mormon, I'm going to read you that passage, and you'll see how brilliantly wonderful, kind, and compassionate death really is. Do we have her a Book of Mormon? You didn't bring her scriptures? Oh, I don't think this is the Book of Mormon, is it? That's just the Bible. Well, I'll just paraphrase it, okay? Because this is what it was about. It was about when we die. What happens when we die? Alma goes in there and says that an angel made known to him that when we die, all souls, every single soul, return to the God who gave them life. No matter if they're wicked or righteous, they all go to the same place, to the God who gave them life. They return home. That's an amazing thing to think that no matter what anybody does, they return where they came from. You got a home, you're raised in a home, you go out, you're the prodigal son or daughter, like my daughter. No, I'm just kidding, Rach. You come home, you're received, in that state equally. That's what it says. That's what Ida knew. She didn't understand all the condemnation and judgment that happens in the world. She didn't quite grasp that until she got the sealed portion. I'm not going to preach about the sealed portion. I'm not going to teach about it. This is about Ida for you folks to understand who she was. The problem Ida had with her family and friends was simply nobody took the time to read the books as she did. Nobody ever did. They were too afraid. Ida wasn't afraid of anyone. Never. I was asked to come to her excommunication, which I didn't want to go to, but I was asked to come. And when her bishop told her that she would lose the Holy Spirit, the power of the Holy Ghost, Ida was Ida. She said, no, you can't take away that from me. Nobody can. This is Ida. People think that I'm standing behind her, whisper something in her ear. No. Ida Smith is Ida Smith. Her independence is profound. I think that's what scared some people about her, was she was so independent. Maybe if they did sit down and talk with her, gee, she makes sense. It makes so much sense. When we went over on that ride to the University of Utah Hospital, and when we were coming back, and I asked her, well, Ida, what do you want me to do when you die? Well, how do you want it to go? She said, Christopher, you get up and you tell them who I am. You tell them who I am. I said, what if nobody comes? She goes, then you look in the mirror and you convince yourself of who I was. That's Ida. You see? That's strong of a woman. But I knew her family, some of her friends. You guys are gracious, wonderful people. I have nothing against the Smith family or any the friends at all. My heart just had gone out for Ida. I don't know why. She always got on me for trying to protect her in any way. She looked at the world with rose-colored glasses. Everywhere she went, there were just lovely, beautiful people, no matter what it was. If somebody came up and hit Ida, she would just say, that is a wonderful, lovely person. I'm not sure why that person just hit me. That's how she was. How do you become that way? Except to have a spirit like she does. One of her favorite quotes from the MWAW was, the true judgment of a righteous person is not how, she always put it, she or he, instead of he or she. It's not how she or he treats their family and friends, but how she or he treats their enemies. She taught me that. That was wonderful. A wonderful example of this lady who I came to know and to love, and I know that she gave up the ghost, if I may, for me, because she did not want to burden me. She did not. When she realized her stubbornness had taken her down, she just basically willed herself to die. So let's go back to that moment of death, what happened in that hospital. Those of you who know how it works, you'll understand how Michael, being asleep, can experience an experience of Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, Lucifer, and all the stuff that happened. He being asleep, he being not in his true form, his true self. If I can go with that as an example, as Ida being Michael, because you know in the presentation that Joseph Smith gave us, we're all supposed to look at ourselves respectively as if we're Michael being put to sleep and become Adam and Eve. Okay? Ida, at that moment, disconnected. Michael woke up, and Ida's body was just laying there. Now, how do we know that to be the case? We go back to the Book of Mormon. This is what Ida wanted me to tell you, to explain to you. The Book of Mormon, some people think that the spirit is already in that body inside the mother because it kicks and it moves and it's like that. But that's not what the Book of Mormon teaches, because before Christ visited the Americas, a day before he came, he was talking to Nephi. Before he was born over in Jerusalem, he was talking to Nephi over in the Western Hemisphere. Nephi, be of good cheer, for tomorrow I come I into this world. He obviously wasn't a ventriloquist. He was in that space, that advanced human form. Ida simply disconnected at that time. Me and my friends, we saw it, we knew it, and then her body just existed. Just like a child inside the womb. The brain's working fine. Okay, the blood vessels are pumping, heart's pumping, no respiratory, because once you get it started here, you don't end it until the brain shuts down. But the same, it's just like Christ's body. 2 days before he visited the Americas. It was just a pumping away, but he certainly wasn't in there because he had things to do. Ida's got things to do. But I'm going to tell you the last thing she would want me to tell you to her family and friends if you're interested. I'm going to tell you the things she wanted me to end her celebratory speech address with. You guys want to help me? Read the damn books. That's it. You'll never understand where she came to and how she did. You don't have to give up your religion, not at any time. That's not a good, kind, compassionate thing to do, to give up your religion and give up your family and that. That's not. You don't do that. That's not what Christ would teach. But to learn a different way of thinking, whether you agree with it or not, that's compassionate. That's love. And that's the message she wanted me to give to the family and friends that did come tonight. And those of you, Tony and Laura put together the slideshow and showed this eclectic group of people that got involved in Ida's life. Long-haired hippies, like I was. People that the society would think, these just aren't normal people. And it's true that Ida sometimes didn't have patience with some people, but she still loved them. She stayed with them, put her arms around them. She never, ever drank a glass of wine. I tried to get her to, but not Ida Smith. You don't get Ida Smith to do anything. So with that, folks, I just want you to know that I've done my part in telling the world. It's recorded. They have it recorded for anybody to see. I've done what Ida asked me to do. I've said, went on a little bit after her one phrase, but whether you read the books or not, Ida will always exist in your mind eternally. That's how it works, folks. If you understood, again, back to your Book of Mormon teachings, where the body, the mind is a perfect, you recollect everything perfectly. So all of your experiences with Ida will always be there eternally. Whether she goes on to be somebody else or she is somebody else, doesn't matter. To you, she will always be Ida Smith. To me, she will be. That said, anyone who wants to talk about Ida, their experiences with her, you're welcome to stand up and talk. Any family or friends that would like to, you're welcome to say anything you want. There's no bar of any, not drinking, Julie, no bar when it comes to what you say or what you'd like to share. So, Julie, maybe you can share a little bit about, because I'm sure folks, because she is in this Taggart thing, that's Julie Taggart, and tell people how she came even to know me, how that happened exactly. If you can stand up just because you were there. She is the one who, and explain it, the experience of how it went, if you don't mind. Thanks, Julie. Then you can stone her. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks.
Really didn't intend to do this, but I love Ida. She is the absolute strongest woman I know. I think she would look at me and think, Julie, and just be frustrated with me. But when I divorced my husband, his family would no longer have any association with me. And I hadn't seen or heard from Ida, but when I heard about the sealed portion, when I'd read it almost 3 times before I'd ever met the man who translated it, Ida was the first name that popped in my mind that would be very interested in that. But I thought, well, she's part of my husband's family, and I didn't know whether, I didn't think she would, but I just wasn't sure, and I didn't want to cause any upset by calling one of his family members. So I decided to go to the Salt Lake City Library where they were holding a seminar. Actually, some of you may know Maxine Hanks. A seminar on the life of Mary Magdalene. And I thought to myself, I already know about Mary Magdalene because I learned about it in the sealed portion, and I thought, what else could someone tell me? But I thought, well, I'll make the effort and I'll go. So I entered the library, went down and sat down. It was in the theater, and sat down, and all of a sudden I popped up for no good reason and moved 5 rows down. And I listened to the lecture. It was interesting, but as I said, I already knew more than she ever could present in that meeting. And at the end, somebody down my row asked a question. And I looked down to see who was asking the question, and as I looked down past the woman, there was Ida. I thought, oh my gosh, it had been 15 years since I had seen Ida. And I had to chase her down because she was on her way up the stairs. And grabbed her, for she didn't recognize me. We both had changed a little bit. And we walked out, and one of the things that I've learned in the sealed portion and from Christopher is this is not something that you share with people, because if people aren't ready for it, they don't want to know about it. It's really a violation of the 11th Article of Faith that says we allow people to believe what, how, and where they worship the way they want. So I was careful not to violate that day with Ida. But we walked out together, and I said, you know, Ida, I'm not active in the church anymore. And she said, oh? And I would like to know why. And I said to her, I found something else. And she said, oh? And I don't even know her. You know what this would sound like coming from her. And she said, and what is that? Now, if you know Ida, Ida has been on a search for years to know about the sealed portion. She faithfully read the Book of Mormon every year. She listened to the videos. She would meet with Cleon Skousen, who wrote the little pamphlet that said why we don't have the sealed portion. I don't know if that's familiar to any of you. So I took a chance and I said, well, I found the sealed portion. And I could see a visceral reaction in Ida that I thought, oh my gosh, this may resonate with her. And she said, how can I get my hands on that? And I said, I'll get one to you. And in 2 days, Monica, bless her heart, shipped one off to Ida. And then I didn't hear from her, and I thought, oh, maybe that was a bad move. And it was about 2 weeks later that I got a phone call from Ida. And she started to cry on the phone. And she said, Julie, I know it's true. She said, then her next question was, how long have you known about this? And this was 2007. And I said, I learned about it at the end of 2004. And she was mad. She wanted to know why I didn't call her and tell her about it before. But we all learn in our own due time. But I'm grateful for this opportunity to share. I just want you to know, those of you that have come that are her friends or distant relatives, how much I appreciate you doing that, because you're honoring Ida by being here. And I thank you. And one little tidbit, I hope the lady, I don't even think she's here anymore, that she shared with me when she came in, is that her husband gave Ida her first kiss, which I thought was very important.
Thank you. Anybody else want to get it?
Just from our colleagues, and
Oh, if
they might be, looks like some are down.
Go ahead, Tony.
I just have one real quick, this, Ida promised, well, I promised Ida that I'd play this one really quick thing if she was ever to go and I was still around. This statement right here, well, I'll just play it so you can listen to her. This is what you want me to play.
As far as a human being can absolutely know something to that point, I know who Christopher is. And so when people get on my case about this charlatan and all these other things, and you don't know the man, you don't have any idea who he is. Well, I know, as far as it is humanly possible, to know who he is. And I don't have a problem with that. And if anybody else has a problem with that, read the damn books. And get off my case. Oh, Ida. Anyway.
Wow. Thanks, Tony. Are there any of her friends or family who'd like to say anything? Any of her colleagues? Oh, go ahead.
I was visiting a friend one day. I knew Ida. I walked over to her house. I sat down and talked with her and said, how do you know all that you know? And she said, read the damn books. And that's all she said to me. I was new to this, and I didn't. I hadn't read the books. And I still have not read all the books because I thought I knew. I thought I knew. I thought I knew. I still haven't read all the books. I still don't know. But that's all she wanted to tell me.
Well, thank you, Christine. Yeah, that Ida, she kind of had a sailor's mouth at the end of the day.
That's the only word she ever heard.
If the, and anyone that has nothing to do with the MWAW, please feel free to stand up, tell us about Ida from your perspective. And like I say, this isn't about really the MWAW and those things. We're just celebrating who Ida was, and that's why it was such a big part of her life. But now here's the man who was one of the last people who saw her, and who picked her up, put her in a wheelchair, and.
Well, I had just gotten back from Salt Lake City, and my front door was open, as I normally leave it open sometimes, and I was putting all my groceries away in the kitchen, and I hear a knock on the door, and I just shout out, "Come on in." So this person walks into my kitchen, and he explains that my neighbor has had an accident, and could I come and help? And I just thought that something had happened right outside the door, or something like that. So when I go out, here's Ida across the street with the door of the car open, and so I go over and I say, "Ida, what's up?" And she says, "Well, I think I've sprained my knee." And I said, "Okay, well, let's see. Do you want to, try and get into your home?" She says, "Yeah, we could try doing that." So I went to lift her, or to help her out, and she couldn't put any weight on the left leg. She was in tremendous pain. And so I said, "Okay, well, why don't we just call an ambulance?" And then, we were thinking about calling the ambulance when I said, "Or would it be better to just bring you to the hospital?" She says, "That's a good idea, let's go to the hospital, I said, "Well, then in that case, because in Ida's car, she has a front seat is kind of like a bench seat. So I said, let's see if we can slide you over, and then I can drive you." And so we went to try and do that. I had the couple that had found her at the post office and that had followed her home. I went around to the passenger side and try and get my hands underneath her and on her back and kind of slide her over. So we were making a little bit of progress on that, and she was just in excruciating pain. This was, it was not good. And then she looks at me and she says, "You sit in and I'll drive." So I sit in, and she drives and turns around, the turning circle. We get over to, I thought we were just going to go to the local hospital just right up the road, but that wasn't big enough. She didn't want to go there. So we went to Timpanogos. And so anyways, we get there, and it just takes forever. I go in, I explain to the people in there was hardly anybody around. It took quite a while to get a wheelchair organized so that we could, get her taken care of. In the meantime, they'd asked me to fill up the, put in as much information as I could, think of in the console. So I couldn't remember what date of birth she was. So I go out to Ida, but in the meantime I see this couple of nurses with the wheelchair, and so I said, you're coming out to help this lady. I said, okay, let's go ahead and do that. So at that point, Ida has turned herself a little bit in the driver's seat with the door open, so we get the wheelchair right up to it, and then I just go in there and just lift her up and, bring her out, put her in the wheelchair, and we get her in. And, well, I must back up. When we're outside in the street opposite her home, she's looking at her leg, and she looks at me and says, "This was not my plan for this afternoon." This has really messed up my afternoon. So anyway, so the thing is that we get her into the hospital, and I've never heard Ida swear ever, or ever say a curse word ever. She said 4 of them between the garden park and when she got into the hospital. She said another couple in there, you know. So anyway, that was, but you know, I'm just, you know, Ida, the fact that she, you know, had the, you know, the people go to my door and, you know, call on me and have me come and help her, was, you know, I was very honoured for her to do that. But anyway, I miss her. I just, you know, you'd always see her coming out her door, and, you know, she'd be hell-bent on going somewhere, and I'd say, "Hi, Ida," and she'd turn around and look, "Oh, hello," just be on her way, you know. So anyway, strong-willed woman. I mean, it was an experience going to the hospital with her driving with that much pain and all the rest of it. I was just, you know, hoping that we just got there, which we did. So anyway, that was Ida, you know.
There's one more thing I want to memorialize on film for everybody. Get this, picture this. Ida, oh, she swims. She swam every week. She'd go down to the Orange City Center and swim. So this particular day, there was something going on that I needed to ask her about. So I came to her door, knocked on her door. Ida has her bathing suit on, her slippers, her shower cap. And I said, "Ida, I've got to ask you." So let's go see. I said, "Ida, so you imagine me. I'm dressed pretty good. So we're going to go out of her door." She takes my arm. She doesn't even care. And then she says, "Wait, I got to get my sunglasses." Ida Smith goes back in her house and knows who knows what's coming. She gets these sunglasses. She puts them on. She comes back out. "Let's go." I look down. She has on these 3D movie sunglasses. I said, "Ida, those are movie sunglasses." She goes, "I know. I wanted to keep them. I didn't want to throw them away." She would wear the 3D sunglasses. How many of you saw were those? Remember that? You've seen her with them. They're 3D. And there you can imagine coming out, us walking down the sidewalk. I'm looking around. And she's going, "Let's go see." I can't remember exactly what we were going to see. And she's walking along. Slippers, bathing suit, shower cap, 3D movie sunglasses. I had to get that on film. That was one of the funniest things with Ida. Oh, boy. Anyway, hi Norma. You're still with us. How did you beat Ida? You were going to go before Ida, you said. Jeez. Now you can go. Meet her there. No, I'm just kidding. Come on, guys. I'm just kidding. You just let me know when you're going to go. And me and the friends will come by there and see you. Anyway, Sherry, come up. Share us some of your memorable moments with Ida that you can remember. And also, read your poem. Oh, I got to tell you about the poem in there. Sherry wrote that poem. She said, "Christopher, can you write?" Can I say that, Jay? "Can you write something for Ida?" I said, "No. You do it. You do it." Because Ida and Sherry got pretty close. I said, "You sit down and write something for her." She goes, I don't know if I can." I said, "I know you can. So let me read it." This is Ida, those who know her. It's everything poetically how Sherry wrote it. It's just beautiful. "Ida, you see the world through rosy glasses, all you meet so dear. Never an ill word to speak, you pull your loved ones near. Strength and courage in a small frame, what you find you share. With hope for all to see the light, this burden you do bear. A grand adventure is your life, the captain always you. Your passionate quest for truth is shared by only few. So on you go, more lives to live. I hope to be there too. Right by your side, we will defend all that we know is true." Sherry Nemelka. I thought that was just amazing. So please, Sherry, tell us about your moments with Ida. Sherry's my wife, for those who didn't know. Well, the best you can. What's the funniest thing you can remember?
Yeah, I'm
about
going to
Ida.
talk about something funny.
Yeah, talk about that.
Last week wasn't very funny, and it was pretty hard to see Ida in so much pain at some moments. But actually before she fell, probably a few days before, I was sitting on the couch with Ida, distraught about some things because Ida became, to me, a very strong support in my life. And it was pretty hilarious because several times, everyone knows Ida's never been married, but she's counseled lots of people about relationships. And she would tell me, and she had great wisdom and a lot of things that she knew about. And a lot of times that I would tell her of my struggles in supporting Christopher in his role. And she would say, he's never gonna ask me, but boy do I want to tell him some things about being a husband. And I would just laugh, and she would hold my hand, and I'd say, Ida, that's not his number one thing, being a husband. So he's probably not going to ask you about that, but I appreciate it. And she'd squeeze my hand. And so I remember that last time that I was over there, just a few days before she fell, and I was struggling with some things, and she just held my hand, and she just said, I know Chris has a really tough road and some of the things he does and what he's up against, but I just want to tell him sometimes that you have the second hardest job. And it was just, she was always there for me like that. But with the things that were going on in the hospital, she'd have her good times and she'd have her bad times, and I thought this was pretty Ida style humorous, even though none of that week was too humorous. But so from the time she got out of surgery, they were just giving her so much medication. She had the general anesthesia, and then she had Valium to come out calmer because she was having some struggles, and then they got her on the morphine, and they got her on some oxy, and they were having problems communicating her pain issues and things, and so she had all these, medications, which I'm sure she wasn't used to. And then I don't know how many days it was into it where she started to spike a temperature. And so the nurse came in there, was trying to tell her that she was going to get her to take some Tylenol. And Ida looked at me like, Sherry, if you let them give me Tylenol, Tylenol is not good for you. And I just looked in her face and was like, Ida, I'm so sorry, but you have a temperature and they need you to take this Tylenol. So then she just kind of, bore it, and she took it, and she actually did a really good job. And the nurse looks down at her and she goes, well, wow, you still have some fight in you, don't you? And she was right in her face, and Ida goes, hell yes! And I was like, oh my goodness! So that was pretty funny. I thought that was pretty funny. And then the nurse just says, wow, I like you. I really like you. So.
Well, remember what happened before Ida went to surgery. Sherry and I were in there because you brought back what she said. She started lecturing me about being a husband. She was getting ready to go into surgery. They were just coming into forever. She was Christopher. No, yes, remember I asked you to leave out the room?
Oh, okay.
Remember? I said, well, why don't I talk to you about something? And so I had Sherry leave, go out of the room. I explained to Ida, look, you've seen me treat Sherry with a little bit of, I'm been impatient and stuff. Her surprise birthday party's coming up. Her birthday was on the 20th. And while Sherry was out of the room, I explained to Ida this big surprise that the kids had set up. And so Sherry was out, she didn't know what we were talking about. So I explained that to Ida. I told you that already, what had happened. And she said, okay, I'm not that mad at you anymore then. Because we were doing something for Sherry. But yes, it's true. Sherry lives close to Ida in that proximity. And many of you also know of my struggles at times of being as good a husband as I could be. But Ida was a protector, a woman's protector. Oh my goodness sake. Yeah, I think you all know that. Anybody else? Sorry, things are coming to my mind. I want to get them memorialized on video. Anybody else would like to say anything?
I'll say a little something. My mother passed away 2 years ago, almost to the date of Ida, and I went through the same thing. My mom fell, and within just a few days, she passed away, almost identical, within one day. I will say one thing about that, my experience with Ida. Where I was living at the time, I didn't always get internet access very well, and so I made a call to say, where should I go to see the broadcast, okay? And they said, well, you can come down and watch it with Ida. And so I got my car and drove down from Salt Lake to Orem here, and I knocked on the door, and I'd never seen Ida before. And she welcomed me, and I said, I'm having a little trouble with my internet. I was wondering where I could go see it, you know, the show. And she said, well, you can watch it with me. And I told her who I was, and it was funny. I thought we'd be watching it on the TV there. And she said, well, let's get everything set up. So we went in her bedroom on her single bed, and sat there. And I'm thinking, well, this is really odd. And I'm thinking, here I am, I haven't met this one before. I'm sitting in her bedroom on her bed with her, and we're watching. I just had to share that. It was comical. She was okay with it, I mean, but I didn't have that in mind. But she was a wonderful lady, and I love and respect her. And she kind of took the place of my mom in that she emulated my mom in that way. My mom was 83 when she passed, same with Ida, so that's what I wanted to share with you.
Thanks, Rock. Thank you. Thank you.
I will share something. I've known Ida for 20 or 30 years, I don't know. We belong to a scripture group that met every morning at 7:30, every Saturday morning at 7:30 in Salt Lake. So Ida would drive all that way, and it kind of fell apart because those of us who had children, it was kind of hard to get going, you know, at 7:30 in the morning on Saturday. But we always remained good friends, and I didn't see her very often, but we'd see her, I would see her at a lot of Mormon feminist places. And so I'll have to say that Ida and I did not see eye to eye in terms of our political views. And I tend to be a fairly liberal person, and she was very conservative. And so she sent me this book, 666, and she said, "Ann, I want you to read this." And I said to my husband, "Oh." But you know, I thought, here's a person that cared enough about me that she would buy this book and send it to me. The least I can do is read it, which I did. And then when I saw her the next time, she said, "What did you think?" And I said, actually, it was very different from what I expected, and I thought that it made a lot of sense. I had to say that it seemed very reasonable to me. She was so pleased, and so she wanted me to read more and more. But she was such a passionate person. I mean, how can you not just love her for the passion that she had for life and for women's issues? And you know, the last few years, she was so dedicated to helping people who didn't have as much as we had. And in a world where there's so much craziness, you have to just admire how selfless she was and how passionate she was to help other people. And like you said, she didn't just say it, she lived it.
Right. Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Maybe just
Oh, awesome. No, please go ahead.
Well, I go back 65 years. Can you hear me? I'm hearing aids and can
You know, I'm going to stand, I'm going to let you speak into this.
Yeah, you need to.
I'll talk louder.
No, you can't.
He'll be able to.
They want to hear you.
Okay, I go back 65 years with Ida. And we were at the University of Utah. We both lived at Carlson Hall. I had come from Chicago and California, and this is the dormitory for out-of-state people, and she had come from, I guess, Hawaii then, I guess. And anyway, we lived in Carlson Hall, and then we moved to one of the houses on the campus, and we had a dormitory upstairs with 8 of us that were there. And the 2 things I remember about Ida is that she was very frugal, and she would keep track of every expense, every penny that she paid. And I think I saw in her book one time 1 cent for stamps. Remember when they were? And just down to the pennies. She also took I was going to show with the Kleenex. She would also take a piece of Kleenex and tear it in half, and just use a half at a time. And anyway, so we were University of Utah, and then when she was in Hawaii, my father, who was a doctor, went over to the Church College of Hawaii for 2 years and set up the health department for students. So he was over there with his a second wife and 2 boys, and my sister. I have a sister 11 years younger than I am, and they finished the school. They finished the year, and my father moved back to California. But my sister, who was about 7 or 8, wanted to finish the school year, so she lived with the Smiths for the half year or so to finish the year, which was very nice. And then I've seen Ida over the years. She had a good friend, very close friend, Myrna, who was a friend of mine from Chicago years ago. But I agree with the things said were wonderful. Oh, I'll tell you another thing. We belong to a fine arts club, and you were there a month ago. And so I was head of a nominating committee about 5 or 6 years ago, and I called Ida to see if she would be president of the group for the next year. And she said, well, Beverly, have you read City Weekly today? And this must have been 208, 207, 208.
I think it was 208 when they did that, or 209 when they did that.
I think, yes, because I think, was she excommunicated in 208?
Yes.
So it was after that, a year or two after that. So this was a Thursday, and she said it just came out today. So I went down to our library and stole 20 copies of it and passed them out to friends in the fine arts.
Oh.
But I just learned.
Thank you.
And she said at the time, you may not want me to be president of it because it's a, I guess, all Mormon group. And but I learned so much from that article. And so I've been fascinated ever since. And I think the world of Ida, thought the world of her, and I was stunned to open the paper and see the obituary in there. And so it's been nice to be here and meet some of you that have been very friendly. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. What was your name again?
Oh, what is it?
Your husband know?
It's Beverly Johnson.
Beverly Johnson. Okay,
yeah.
I just talked of you before. Talked to friends.
Yes.
Marita,
yes,
Marita too.
Marita and I go back to Chicago when we were 5 years old.
Oh.
But I'll tell you about my husband because he's retired now, but for about 40 years he's a surgeon, and he was head of the chief of surgery at Primary Children's Hospital until he retired. So he's at the medical school, so I was very interested to hear that her body has gone to the new students that are coming up.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you guys for coming. That's very, very nice. Sharon, please. You don't need this. No, you're...
I'm camera shy, but I think it would not be right if I didn't say something about my relationship with Ida, because if it weren't for Ida, I probably wouldn't be here. Not here on earth, but here among friends with them. But you prompted something when you talked about her ripping the tissue in half, because we've had lunch together, Ida and I, several times, and she always did that. And I said, the thing is, it always was perfectly straight. I remember once I said, how do you get it so straight? And she taught me, she said, try on their lines, you have to call the lines, you do it this way, and she actually taught me how to read it, so the tissue is perfectly straight, and she was fast. But Ida is instrumental in, like I said, in my being here, because the book that blew me away was The Sacred Not Secret. When I had been a member of the church for 21 years at the time, and the last 2 years I was on a search. I was on a personal mission to unravel the secrets of the temple. I wanted to understand, so I was going to the temple constantly trying to figure out all the symbols and what everything meant. And I spent all that time getting nowhere, and getting more and more frustrated. I couldn't get it. I was getting... Then one day, I was scouring the internet. I remember what I was searching for, but something led me to something that led me to the MWA website. And I looked at the bottom and saw a number of books. I thought, oh, interesting. And I came across this one, Sacred Not Secret, the official guide to understanding the temple. And I go, wow, this has been my life for the past 2 years. That's what I've been trying to do. So I downloaded the book and read it. And I started reading it, and I couldn't stop. I sat there, and from beginning to end, after I was done, I'm like, who wrote this? Who is this? Who knew all this stuff? Anyway, then I went back to the site and started to, because now I'm curious, where this book, who is this person? So I read more of the things on the site, and I read the stories. The stories. And I read every single one of your stories, by the way, every one of you. And I said, I need to call somebody. I was nervous because by the time I was finished the book, I was kind of sure that I probably was not going to go back to church because I wanted more of this stuff, right? And the stuff that was in the book. So, but I was nervous. I was extremely nervous. I mean, I raised my children in the church and everything, and I thought, I need to call somebody. So that very evening, I decided to call Ida. After reading her story, I thought, I need to anchor myself. I need to figure out. So I called Ida, and she took the time. She spent about 45 minutes on the phone with me. It was me being very nervous about the future. I told her I just read this book. I don't know. I want to know if she knew Christopher and how she felt about him. And I asked her, I said, do you have any doubt about who he says he is? And she says, none whatsoever. She said it with such firm conviction. It pierced into me. And by the end of our conversation, I felt her strength was what gave me the strength to say, yes, I can do this. I can leave and go after this. I can do it too. And that's what I did. And I really feel like, I don't know because this is how it is now, but I feel like I owe my courage to be able to do this, to leave 21 years of LDS Church and embrace the work to Ida. I really do. It's her courage that helped me. And so that's my memorial of her.
Thank you. Oh, yes, please. Please do. We'll get you there because...
Well, in reading the City Weekly article, I think a seed was planted in Ida when she was about 8 years old, as I remember. It seems I read in there that she went back to Chicago to visit an aunt when she was about 8 or 9. And I don't know what happened there, but I called her later and I said, what was your aunt's name? Because I grew up in Chicago when it was just a very small Mormon group, and I just wondered if I'd known her, which I didn't. But I gathered from that, and then, of course, she spent a lifetime in Stanford and here, with the church. But I just wonder if something the aunt said years before started things churning in her mind.
Well, one thing about Ida, like we put in the program there, that was her favorite scripture. She loved Joseph Smith's translation. Joseph Smith he retranslated some parts of the Bible and stuff, and she just absolutely loved what's on her, the Isaiah 29 that's on her what do you call this? Program. Okay, and so we put that there. And what it is Joseph Smith, he talks about the sealed portion in this more than he ever did. Of course, the LDS Church doesn't really subscribe to the inspired translation. They use the regular standard works. But Ida was just intrigued with it. And she didn't meet me for some time thereafter, and I want her friends that are here to know that. The story in the City Weekly was very subjective. They had one thing in mind, make me look like a bad guy. That's what they wanted to do. Okay, they don't know me. It's typical of, with some claims like that, I don't blame them. Anybody should be skeptical. Who is this guy? What's going on here? But Ida took it like this because of her ancestry and her love for Joseph Smith. She had people give her anti-Mormon stuff and all these things that some of it she read and said, this doesn't make sense. So she knew, just like my enemies and critics do, there's all kinds of things out there that are negative and wrong. But the truth never scared her. Never, ever once. And when I first met Ida, I was astounded at just her strength. And she looked me straight in the eye. She always did. She always said what she thought and thought what she said. Always. She didn't pull any punches. Those of you who want, after this event, I'm going to open up her home. Everybody can go over there and you can walk through it and see how this lady lived. I haven't changed anything. I haven't touched anything. It's Ida. Her little trinkets. And if you would like, Sister Johnson, I would give you the last, if you would like it, the last little notebook of her accounting where she keep track as a memorandum if you'd like it. It's over there and you're right. Everything she puts down, and I trust you that you'll keep it to yourself, and because there's everything Ida spent. She did that.
She still tears the hankies. Yeah.
And she still tears the hankies all the time. I asked her one time, I said, Ida, do you have 2-ply or 1-ply toilet paper? I asked her that, and she'd laugh at me, Ida and I would spar back and forth sometimes. If you really got to know her like I did, you would see she didn't have that special man in her life. She didn't have that husband, that person who women are attracted to, who they feel secure around. But she loved her brothers. She loved her cousin, Ballard, Apostle Ballard, her friends from Dallin H. Oaks, the senators, Orrin Hatch, Bob Bennett, anyway, Jeff Holland, there's a lot of them. She loved those guys. And so this was what's interesting. We'll get this for her memorandum. She got that sealed portion. This is Ida Smith. And I'm not the type of person that says you go proselyte this, because that's not what it's about. You don't take away a person's religion. You allow a person who's searching to find a different idea. Ida took the sealed portion to Bob Bennett when he was a senator. Bob, you got to read this. Gave it to him. Bob Bennett, a senator. And you can imagine, and I understand exactly what his reaction was to me. Here, this charismatic, younger guy, what's he doing to my good friend? And I guarantee you, Senator Bennett opened a very intense investigation to make sure that there was no harm going on there. And they did their investigation. Obviously, there wasn't any harm. But her tenacity. And then she took the Human Reality book to Orrin Hatch. Orrin, you got to read chapter 18, because this is what the Senate has to do. Chapter 18, it's about social programs to help the poor and the needy. It talks about those things. Ida goes to a U.S. senator. You got to read it. Of course, they just kind of, okay, Ida, what is she saying? What happened to Ida? Where'd she go? And it was just interesting. She had no fear of anyone. She found out real quick, though, she's got to kind of keep her opinion to herself about some things, because people didn't understand her. They thought that Ida would make decisions that weren't smart because of her age. But when she heard that upset her more than anything. I do not like when people think I'm an old woman. I just do not like that. And on that, her best friend, Myrna, the one who she told me to mention, Myrna. I keep saying Myrna. Ida wanted me to mention you in her obituary. And that's why I did it. I'm sorry that you had to be mentioned alongside me, but Myrna was the most wonderful friend to Ida, spoke of her very kindly. They would go together. Myrna's response to, and if you'd like to say something, we'd love to hear from you.
I can't do that one because I just ended up tears.
Her response is whatever. She saw Ida. It was one of the last people to see Ida in her bed, and we left her alone to say goodbye to Ida. But Ida always spoke very kindly of you and your loving, compassionate way of accepting her always. And I just wanted to say that. So. And Ida had season tickets to the BYU games. That's another thing we got to talk about. Ida loves BYU basketball. Loved them. She knew my uncle. My uncle was Dick Nemelka back in the 70s. And Ida was back at that time and saw all that basketball. Loves the guys, calling them handsome, and she knows all the players' names. Loves basketball, BYU basketball. She always has. You know, if they got a basketball where she is, she'll watch it there. But anyway, we're filming this so that we can get these capture these moments. So anybody else have something? Glenn lived underneath, and we'll get to you, Monica. Glenn lived underneath Ida. I asked Glenn to live underneath Ida to watch out for her, okay, just to kind of be there in case something happened. So he was living in Ida's basement, and he would always check on her. Now you need to tell us when you would go upstairs in Ida in your underwear. Come on, let us know about that. And how Ida reacted, and why you did that in the first place.
Sometimes she would just knock on my door, and I was in my underwear, and I'd just answer it. And I go, sorry about this, and she says, hey, I've had brothers, and they're all younger than me. You don't have anything I haven't seen, so don't worry about it. So when I go upstairs, and I was in my room, and there was nothing to her, you know. But anyway, as far as of her being a mother, I broke my hand playing basketball in the summertime, in June. And when I broke it, she was down checking on me instead of the other way around. And so she said, when's your appointment? And I told her, well, you gotta make sure you're there, and I'm taking you. And I said, no, I'm supposed to be waiting on you, not the other way around. No, I'm taking you, and there's nothing to do about it. You're gonna listen to me. So, what time is it? Where's it at? So, we get in the car to drive, and if you've ever rode with Ida, it's when you go, it's and when you come to stop, it's it was back and forth like that, and she takes me to the doctor. We see it. She says, "You make sure you do what he says. Take your pills, do all this, and then when's your next appointment?" And you know, she wanted to know if she wanted to take me. I had a broken arm. I could drive, but she wouldn't let me. So we go. She goes to back out, and she goes to put it in drive, and a lady rear ends her, right on our trip to the doctor. And I go, oh, I knew I should have drove myself. And she goes, what happened? And this lady's over here with her butt up against it. She punched a hole with her trailer hitch right through Ida's fender. And the lady pulled out, and she come out, she goes, I am so sorry. And she started crying. And the lady's crying just incessantly. She just can't stop. And Ida says to me, I think she's going to be mad because her husband's going to be so pissed at her for ripping the car. So she goes out and she's talking to her. And I had to call the police, and I told them they're on their way. And Ida's calming this lady down. And the lady says, please, just let me go, just let me go. Ida says, Glenn, can't we just let her go? And I says, well, it's all about you. The damage is your car, Ida. If you want to let her go, that's up to you. But we're supposed to stay and wait for the police to come in. No, it'll be all right. And she's hugging this lady and comforting her. It will be all right. And don't worry about it. Just go on. And and she says, we had to do that, Glenn. She was just so upset. And I said, okay, out of your box. So she took care of it when I was sick. Always come down and see if I was all right. Made sure I had ice on it. So she just mothered me. And when it's supposed to be the other way around. Well, she went to go get her estimate. And she said, will you come with me? I go, yeah. So we go to get it, and she goes, by the way, this is my son. And I was overwhelmed, you know, and so she comes up to me, I told him he was my son, is that okay? And I go, so in the last part, when we was in the hospital with her, I wrote that I was her son. Took it into the room, I just put down, I'm her son. And I didn't have any problems. I walk, go, come. They told me everything. So in her final days in the hospital, she didn't want to take her medicine. She didn't want to eat. She didn't want to talk to the nurses. They'd say, Ida, how tall are you? You need to write this down. I'm not talking to you no more. I'm not taking your drugs. I'm not taking your pills. And I don't want to talk no more. And she tried to give her some Mucinex for her lungs. And she, Ida, you got to take this. Glenn, you stand by me and you do what I say. So she says, well, how tall are you? And Ida wasn't going to answer her. I said, I think she's 5'7". Ida, you 5'7"? And I go, she must be 5'5". Ida, you 5'5"? I think so. So the nurse left the room, and I calmly held her hand. I folded it for her, and I said, Ida, you don't have to say nothing to me. Just hold this up like this. And she started laughing. And she had a good little chuckle. I had some great times with Ida. And we talked at night sometimes. And we had a lot in common. And she definitely was a remarkable lady that you'll never forget. And everything. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, brother. Monica, you want to say? Monica Smith probably has dealt with Ida and known Ida more than most people in the last few years.
Yeah, I didn't get to know Ida really well until the last 3 years, and I remember when she called me up when she wanted to ship this to Orrin Hatch.
Orrin Hatch.
And she is the penny pincher. She still kept her little to the cent. I saw it. And so she called me up, and I was like, Ida, because the book had just barely got to print. We hadn't even got a proof copy yet. And I'm like, well, Ida, there's going to be one book. I have one book that's come to me. And she's like, I have to have that book because he's leaving. He's going somewhere. I've got to have that book. And I said, okay, I'll find out how much it's going to cost to ship it for you. So I call around, and it was going to be like $90 to overnight ship because it was on a Friday. And she wanted it there by Saturday so she could give it to him that afternoon. And so she's like, yep, pay it. She's like, here's my card. And so we shipped the very first, this is the book, the very first one that was off the press, we shipped to him. And eventually when he wouldn't read it or didn't want it anymore, she went and got it back. She didn't want him to have it. She's like, I'm going to have that book back. So, just some other things, like when I would go visit her, one of her favorite things was the Costco pumpkin pie. And she didn't eat, she had decided when she was 26, she told me that she was never going to eat chocolate anymore. And I was like, I eat chocolate all the time, I'm not very healthy. But I'd go to her house and she would get out she would buy a whole Costco pie. And she didn't have many people to feed it to, so she'd be like, okay, here, have a piece of pie, have a piece of pie. She loved, that was one thing that she loved, was the Costco pumpkin pie. She had problems with her computer, and that's really how I got to know her. About 3 years ago, she started to find out that I could help her every once in a while. When I was down here in Utah, I would go to her house and I'd say, well, I'll help you send this email, or she'd send me stuff and say, I want to send this out. I have written an email, I want to send it out to all of my nieces and nephews or whoever. Can you help me? She'd send it to me, I'd format it, send it back to her so that she could send it out to everybody. So I started helping her with the computer. Well, it became so much for her. Like, she just would get frustrated because she couldn't do things that she wanted to. And so I would set up a program. I set up a program on her computer so that while I was in Idaho, I could get on her computer. She'd give me a password every time I call her, and I could get on her computer and actually fix everything for her. She'd call me up, she's like, crap, I messed up again. And sometimes it would just be like she'd accidentally minimized a page, or it was just something simple that she couldn't figure out how to fix it. And she'd spent sometimes 2 hours, and then it'd just be a couple clicks. So I would, help her with that. And so she really was always grateful, and I was like, well, it's just really simple. So every time I came down here, I would see her, and every time I saw her, she would say, well, when's the next time I'm going to see it? When's the next time I'm going to see it? And so I'd say, I don't know, I don't know if I'm coming back next month or in a couple months. But every time I came, I stopped to see her. And we spent lots of time looking through these books, and she didn't ever really want to talk about herself. She wanted to know usually what was going on, either with filter green or what we were doing. She wanted to hear. She always wanted to be a part of it. And so sometimes she did the banking, or she went to the post office. And when she got too old and it was really not feasible, she was upset. She was mad. We're like, no, really, it's okay. We can do this. And but she would be mad, like, no, I can do this still. The bank ladies love me when I come and bring them money to deposits. So. The last time I got to talk to her was the night before she went into surgery. So I called her when she was in the hospital. So she got hurt on Valentine's Day, and I called her on Sunday in the hospital. And she was kind of out of it because she was a little, with the drugs and everything. But she wanted me to read her the journal that had been posted that day. So I read the journal to her. It was that important to her. I know that what the marvelous work and wonder meant to her was so important. It was so important to her. So I'm glad to know her.
Thanks, Monica. Look, these are the books that Ida read herself. Okay, she had me dedicate this to someone. I'm going to read it, and whoever wants it, this goes to somebody who isn't part of the work or doesn't have a book. This is to her family or friends. This is what I wrote, and this is what Ida wanted me to write to the person who wants this. If you want it, you can take it. To whomever received this book, this is Joseph Smith's biography. There is no biography in the world about Joseph Smith more intense, more cross-referenced, more noted than this book. It's an incredible work. This is what Ida had me write. To whomever receives this book, if you are in possession of this book, then it is by way of Ida Smith, my dearest friend. In it, you'll find the real truth about Joseph Smith Jr., Ida's great-great-uncle. This book was written under the guiding, gentle, and often patient auspices of Joseph himself. Receiving this book from Ida demonstrates a great love she has for you and her hope that you find as much comfort and joy in the marvel of its abundant and wonderful revelations about her uncle as she did. None other has been a greater supporter of the marvelous work and wonder that her uncle, Joseph, started long ago than Ida Smith. Of this devotion and love, I fully attest. Christopher, March 20th, 2013. You did? Well, then it was meant for you.
She talked about it and she said it's almost ready.
And anyone else like to say something? Denton Thede, for those who know, those of you who think I'm a charlatan, takes people money, no. Denton Thede finances everything. He basically helps us with everything we need financially.
Some things that I would probably not like people to know, but her neighbor that was next door to her, when they were losing their house, Ida made sure they didn't. And she let her live there until she left. Because Ida loved that lady. She loved all of us. I went to the hospital on Sunday night, and I knew it wasn't too long. because nobody could help her do anything. Her food came, she couldn't eat it. I tried to help her and she said, no, I have to do it myself. And Monica had called, and her first thing was, why did Christopher post that about me? I can do it myself. She made an effort to get the monument put in the Salt Lake Cemetery. She worked so hard. It had to be just right. And then when somebody damaged it, she spent all this time making sure it was fixed. Because she knew what it meant. She loved everybody, but she loved the work. She loved the truth. And that's what I remember about her. She was a great sister. And I'll never forget her.
Thank you, Den.
Thanks, brother.
I want you folks to know, oh, go ahead. I want you folks to know that her family is also going to have a special memorial for her just amongst the family members. And I've been in communication with them, and they've been a couple of brothers have been very nice and very cooperative and very grateful for the things that we've done for in her last days. I just wanted you guys to know that. Go ahead, Mark.
I saw Ida Smith the first time on YouTube, and I think Tony was in charge of it. He said, Ida Smith excommunicated for reading the sealed portion of the Book of Mormon. And I thought, this lady has been a member of the church all her life. And she loved the truth enough to investigate what the sealed portion is all about. And also then faced excommunication for believing it. And it inspired me, and I watched the whole program, and then I saw this other guy behind the blue screen, and it was Christopher, and he spoke with authority. He wasn't like the scribes and Pharisees. And I said, this is the guy I've been looking for all my life. And Ida, she's inspired a lot of people to investigate the sealed portion. And she should be remembered for that.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, her little video, her little YouTube video, for those who don't know, it's she did an interview. Ida did an interview, and they recorded it, put it on YouTube, about her finding the sealed portion, especially after the City Weekly thing, all these rumors of what might have happened, things go through people's heads. So she basically gave an interview and just told people how it was. And it's got how many hits on that, Tony? 135,000, you know, and that just speaks to her tenacity, Ida's tenacity. And I always, since I knew the lady, Ida, shut up, man. Just don't talk about it. Just let it help you. Don't talk about it, because it ain't coming after you. They're coming after me. And as she approached the senators and some apostles and her good friends, she finally figured out that if a person isn't looking for a change, then they're not going to find it. And why does anyone have a right to introduce something that someone's not looking for? But the thing again that amazed me the most was this little teddy bear that she gave me. Because I've had an issue. I've had an issue with the way that I've been treated and she's been treated. And she just said, forgive them. Forgive them, Christopher. They know not what they do. They don't know you, and they don't know me. Ida is just incredible. Anybody else like to say something about her? What time is it?
10 to 8.
10 to 8. Well, we can just congregate. I'm gonna go open her house. Those of you, it's 222 over there. 224, I'm sorry. I'm going to open it. We haven't touched anything. You can open her fridge, you can go in her room, and if you like that little book, I'll find that little book and give it to you. And I promised her family that they can go through it first and take what they want. And they're doing that on Wednesday. A nephew's coming on Tuesday and is going to go over things with me. On Wednesday, the family's coming. And then on Thursday, it's open for you guys. Come in and take whatever you want. Anything of Ida's. Anything. Sardines, supplements. It's crazy. But so let's just end it now, and I'm going to go open her house, kind of like an open house, and just go see how she lived her last moments. If you want to see how Glenn lived, walk down her stairs, open the door, but just go and spend as much time as you want. Anybody can go in there, sit as much as you want. Ida died on her bed in the room in there. And I will find that little book for you. I'll go over and do that. Thank you all for coming. Let's mingle a little bit and spend as long as you like till 9 o'clock. Thanks, guys.